we've got AI now that can generate very good quality code very quickly. So you sort of lowering the barrier of entry to creating automations that ultimately will help us deliver. But from our experience, the biggest impact we have had, because we've developed in-house automations, AI tools, and we call it Recall, and it's accessing all our project or company's information, and we're allowed to retrieve. We can access this information at our fingertips. That might take us 20, 30 minutes to go find it. They can now find it in 30 seconds. So that's a considerable amount of time saving. And I think we're only just getting started. I think that example is the most basic application of AI. We've also started to develop a tool called Clarify. And as a consultant throughout the construction phase, we are responsible for responding to RFI from the contractor. It could get up to hundreds a day. And that's taken a lot of time to respond to that. What Clarify does is basically connects into the RFI system, and it generates a response based on the project information and the client standards and other related RFIs. And it generates that, and an engineer can go in, verify that, and use it, send it back. So what's important to know there is that the engineer, is still very much part of that loop and part of that process, which is absolutely critical when we are, designing these buildings and these infrastructure.
Hey Jacob, welcome to the Digital Construction Podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So in this episode, we are joined by Jacob Hoare. He is the digital lead for Asia at Aurecon, and we are going to talk about how digital strategies, AI, and automation are transforming buildings and infrastructure across Asia. We'll also talk about data centers and the future of digital construction in general. But before we start, Jacob, I have a quick question for you. What's the best piece of advice you have ever received in your career?
Good question. I've been quite fortunate to have a few different very good line managers that have all got different styles. But I do remember one, so Gabe Carter, he was my line manager back in Vietnam, and he's now the CEO of Asia. I remember him telling me, talking about, when you first get out of your studying, you're very focused on your core job, your engineering or whatever that may be, and getting very technically very good at it. And that's very important. But also, the quicker that you put pieces of the puzzle together, and the quicker that you understand the industry and the business as a whole, has many moving parts, to be successful, understanding that very quickly is very important, because that's really where I feel when the penny dropped and I started putting the puzzle together, it's when in my own career, the trajectory went a lot faster and steeper. So I've been very fortunate to have a few good line managers that I sort of see as mentors. But that bit of advice there, so really looking at the bigger picture as fast as possible, but while also not compromising on technical excellence.
Yeah, that's definitely important for somebody who's working as a digital lead, because there are so many different aspects. I remember when I was doing this job, people will come with different ideas, different projects, different ideas from. It was very difficult to understand the context of each one of them. So being able to do what you just mentioned, I understand helps a lot. One thing I'm very keen. So you are originally from Perth. You mentioned that to me before, so we can share this with the audience. But now you are in Asia. You worked in Vietnam, and now you are in Singapore. But I'm very keen to learn what do you think about the digital lead role means in practice for you, because different people may have different opinion around that.
Yeah, and I think depending on the company that you're at, it will change. But obviously, I work at Aurecon. We're an engineering consulting advisory company, and so what that means here for me is really driving Aurecon's overall digital strategy into the business. But obviously, we operate in about 8 countries here in Asia, so I really have to put that local lens on it and what's appropriate for that particular market. I feel that Aurecon, we've sort of passed the awareness phase, so my role is very much about driving the technology and the digital pieces such as AI and capability and automation into the projects, and that's very much hands-on and driving that digital into our projects and ultimately having a better result for the clients.
Yeah, that's very good, because I'm sure that people that listen to these episodes, they are keen to understand how do you actually become a digital lead, and understanding what digital leads actually do is very important. Another thing that's very interesting to understand is you have an Australian background, but you work at the moment in Asia. So I'm very interested to understand from your point of view, what are the differences between these markets, let's say between Australia, Singapore, or the places where you worked. What's the situation in Asia?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because the maturity of the regions and the practices, they're very differently. I do like to think that we try to keep a very consistent approach to our projects, but ultimately, depending on those client requirements, we're going to expect it to deliver more mature expectations. And then even at this sort of authority and government level, Singapore is very advanced. Vietnam is starting to bring in certain, I guess, BIM guidelines. Indonesia too, but they're not sophisticated as Singapore. So, but saying that, Vietnam, I would argue, is one of our most digitally advanced offices. We've got about 400 people there, and they support the wider Aurecon business, and they're very mature in what they do. So it's not sort of saying that this region is necessarily more mature, because it's definitely not the case. And the fact, though, that Vietnam is our most digital advanced region in Asia for Aurecon, it's actually going to set us up well for when Vietnam does catch up to Singapore in terms of the digital requirements and digital expectations on a project, that we're going to be positioned very well because they've already sort of done it. Similar to how in Thailand and in Vietnam, we got the ISO 19650 well before we were seeing it in tenders and client requirements. And again, fast forward 2 or 3 years, we are set up well because we are familiar with it. We're already doing it in-house or internally before it was actually needed for our own benefits. So yeah, it's an interesting space to sort of, I guess, from my personal perspective, is to sort of coordinate and understand these different regions and what's appropriate. But I do think as a company, we do sort of move all in the same direction as well.
Yeah, it's great to see how these geographies are evolving over time. Their maturity has evolved fairly quickly. If you think about like the so-called Western world, maybe took some time to evolve, while these geographies probably they just took advantage of the slow progress that we have in the Western world, and maybe they are just adopting already the latest technologies, which is great to see.
Yeah.
In terms of like digital, so when you think about like your job is to think about the digital strategy for the overall business in that specific area of the world, but sometimes this needs to be translated into digital delivery. So we actually have to deliver projects. So how do you help Aurecon translate this digital strategy into actual digital delivery, and what this digital delivery for projects means to you?
Yeah, so we have recognized about 7 digital capabilities, and they range from information management and information modeling, so BIM and so on. I would say that's your core engineering digital capabilities. And then you're probably moving towards a bit more cutting edge, so your sort of capabilities around AI, automation, and in digital leadership as well. And I feel, so once we understand those are the capabilities, then we're trying to drive that into the projects. And so there's a capability and a human piece there. So upskilling our teams to be able to deliver projects in a very digital best practice approach. There's also another layer there of the technology. So I do think digital delivery and technology obviously agnostic and should be and can be used across all projects, all types of projects, and it will genuinely improve the project process, I believe. I feel, and also the individual's, experience with it. So, if we just take an example of project, I would say every single project has got some sort of element of digital delivery, a bit more complex than others. So if we've got an advisory project, for example, the expectations of a delivery is, is maybe a report, but it's going to be maybe a soft copy, and you need good information practice to manage that. A very small sort of scope. But then if you've got our data center projects or big infrastructure projects, that same digital approach onto the projects should still be there. It's just the amount of information that you're delivering digitally is essentially getting bigger.
Definitely. And sometimes we have teams that are passionate about digital. They want to show that they are proactive, and they're actually generally keen to do these sort of things. But sometimes people tend to deliver digital solution just for technology's sake, just because they are keen. So how do you help the team understand how to drive real value on projects?
Yeah. So I think there's two pieces that I think is number one is having humans at the center of the technology. I think really actually solving a real problem. It's very, like you said, sometimes it might be a bit of a box ticking exercise. It's a new shiny thing and we want to use it. Again, I think that we've done quite well at Aurecon in the sense we've identified real problems in delivery, and we've come up with different solutions to take the pain away from the team. And I think a big part, a very pragmatic approach we take to it is understand the problem, but it's not a set and forget sort of problem and that we have to solve, the digital team has to solve. We very much want the SMEs, the project delivery team in that process, providing guidance so that when the tool does become into production and or whatever that tool be, or even work for whatever it may be, comes into production and use on a project, we know that it's been tried and tested by the team throughout that process. So definitely just understanding the problem very specifically and having the people who are encountering that problem involved in the development of whatever that solution may be.
Definitely. Another interesting aspect about this digital transformation that we are living now is the AI, of course. And it's a bit early, maybe. It's a bit early now to understand and form a very strong opinion about where this AI wave is going. But from your point of view, at this point in time, where do you think that AI can make the big impact on projects?
So I feel it's gonna close the gap between sort of idea and execution. It's gonna make, there's a lot of, we're doing Aurecon a lot. There's a few things that we're using it for is obviously we're developing our automation tools, and we've got AI now that can generate very good quality code very quickly. So you sort of lowering the barrier of entry to creating automations, that ultimately will help us deliver. But from our experience, the biggest impact we have had, because we've developed in-house automations, AI tools, and we call it Recall, and it's accessing all our project or company's information, and we're allowed to retrieve. We can access this information at our fingertips. That might take us 20-30 minutes to go find it. They can now find it in 30 seconds. So that's a considerable amount of time saving. And I think we're only just getting started. I think that example is the most basic application of AI. We've also started to develop a tool called Clarify. And as a consultant throughout the construction phase, we are responsible for responding to RFIs from the contractor. It could get up to hundreds a day. And that's taken a lot of time to respond to that. What Clarify does is basically connects into the RFI system, and it generates a response based on the project information and the client standards and other related RFIs. And it generates that, and then the engineer can go in, verify that, and use it, send it back. So what's important to note there is that the human, the engineer, is still very much part of that loop and part of that process, which is absolutely critical when we are, designing these buildings and these infrastructure.
Yeah, talking about the humans, sometimes one of the key misconceptions we hear about AI is the fact that we will all lose our jobs and the AI will do everything. But what are, from your point of view, the biggest limitations or misconceptions that you have heard about AI?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think there's that preconception of AI and automation taking people's jobs, but I honestly think it's definitely not. I think with AI, you need to lean into it. I think if you don't and you are constantly going against it, you're not gonna do yourself any favors. I mean, me personally, I use AI daily. It's the first place I start with most tasks. As a soundboard, some ideas, get a different perspective. And I think it really does. I believe it gives me an edge. And I think people that aren't, I think they're doing a risk to themselves and their potentially their job for not leveraging it as much. So yeah, I think it is around the fact that people think it's going to take people's jobs. I think it really is going to take away a lot of these repetitive, boring jobs essentially. So, and is that the question is that do you actually want to do that? So my answer would be no.
Yeah, definitely. One other aspect we have used to get rid of these boring tasks that we don't want to repeat over and over and over is the automation. Have you seen any good automation at Aurecon, and how can we leverage automation in real projects?
Yeah, I mean, so we've recently set up over the past 12 months something called the Automation Center. So it's got all automations from across the business in one place. So we're not reinventing the wheel. It's in one location that people can access and use. That's led by Josh Nelson in Sydney. And we work very closely together. And I also work closely with Thomas de Hughes in Vietnam, who's our automation lead for the DDC there. And we've had some really good results. And the way that approach has been is really looking at the low-hanging fruit. Okay, all these little task automations that save a bit of time. Maybe you're making a 5-minute task to a 1-minute task. But there's the benefit of these tasks of enhancing morale because it's just making people's lives easier. I feel at the moment now we've picked off all the apples at the low part of the tree, and I think we're at the point now where we're going to climb higher. So the way that we have done it is really, like I said, is look at the repetitive, simple tasks that we can do, and let's move on. Let's have a bigger challenge in front of us, and we are tackling that pretty well, I feel, at the moment. But we just need to we're going to take it up another gear.
Yeah, that's good. And do you think that the automation will change the skills needed in digital engineering team now that it's available?
I feel like, again, I think everyone's just going to get leveled up. Like, if you could, so give you an example. If you could automate the routine, repetitive calculations, then the junior staff don't need to do them anymore. Okay, and that's fine. Maybe the technical stuff they can learn it, but they don't need to do it all the time. So then they've now shifted from this sort of level that they can really now focus onto more problem solving, strategic thinking, this sort of thing. And then that means that the senior engineers who were probably doing the problem solving, they can also go into the next level in the next year, and they could be client facing. So I just think it's going to allow people to just become, they're going to enhance their own sort of ability much quicker. And so that's how I see it going.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100% with you. I would like to. I know that you have a lot of experience in data center, and I remember like more than a decade ago, I was working on projects like that, and these buildings were a lot smaller than they are now. And now we're talking about very large buildings. They're really draining the energy, water, like it's a very big infrastructure we're building, and there are companies like the Microsoft and Facebook that are talking about building their own nuclear plants to just feed these monsters. I'm just keen to understand your point of view around data centers, and if you've seen the market for data centers growing in Asia, and how the market has changed for these special buildings.
Yeah. So I think probably the past 5 years I've been involved in data centers one way or another. Probably the past 24 months I've been living and breathing them, and it's been really interesting. Even in that 5 years, and then the past 12 or 24 and 12 months has just been phenomenal. I think I think the APAC region, market share is about 30 billion at the moment. I think in the last 8 years, it's going to be around the 70 billion mark. So it's massive. And the reason behind that is obviously you've got 60% of the world's population within this area. So a huge amount. But the actual capacity for data centers is far lower than, say, Europe and the United States. So it's got a huge opportunity for growth there. Okay. And then from a delivery point of view, the actual scale of these are massively gone big. And that's driven by AI. 100 megawatt data center was classed as very, very big probably about 5 years ago. Now we're seeing ones that are 10 times the size of that. So it's incredibly insane how much these data centers are growing, and I don't think they're going to stop. I think interesting about your comment around the sustainability piece and all the things they consume. But like you said, some of the biggest companies in the world in terms of worth are these tech companies, and they've got the sort of money that they can do the full circle. They can sort of use the energy, buy and purchase the energy to supply their data centers, and they can do it very clean. They've got enough capital there to challenge the norm or traditional ways to do the energy piece, okay? Because they are innovators, that's their bread and butter. So it'll be interesting to see that. And obviously they're then using the AI. They could actually use the AI to sort of enhance that operation piece. So it's like AI is driving the demand for the data centers, and AI is housing the data centers, and then AI is being used to sort of make operations a lot more efficient.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when it reaches the plateau, and because it looks like we are very far from that plateau at the moment. It's still growing. One other aspect will be interesting to learn is how digital can help deliver this type of projects. Have you seen any innovation in that space?
Yeah, look, I think the nature of the data center delivery is extremely quick. So some of the fastest paced sort of delivery environments are very experienced, and just so speed to market is very important. And we talked about AI and automation there. I think digital and technology is very much geared towards supporting this. Data centers are also very repetitive, and if you look at it, it's just very consistent racks and layouts. So there's a huge opportunity there to automate that piece. So I think, I think the data center space is ripe for automation.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that a digital strategy does or helps solve is the complexity around all the things that we see in the digital space, because sometimes people may feel a little bit overwhelmed by the large amount of things that they can possibly do on digital project. So how do you balance this idea of pushing for innovation with ensuring that teams don't feel overwhelmed by this digital complexity?
It probably goes back to my previous comment around having the humans in the center and really understanding what the challenge is, but also making it very simple. I'll quote my boss, Dave McKenzie here. Good work always rises to the top. So what I mean by that is, if the tool is good, people will use it. If people don't use it, there's probably something wrong with the tool. Maybe it's too hard. Maybe it's not enough value. So I think if you pick the right tool or the right solution, whatever that may be, the teams won't feel overwhelmed because they'll genuinely feel that it's impacting them positively.
I want to quote something I've heard from a digital leader once said, that there is real transformation only when there is adoption. So it's not just about building stuff, adoption, it's key.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really good point. Like, we can build the best tools in the world, but if they're not getting used, it's honestly a waste of time.
Yeah.
So again, having the people in the process understanding exactly what they need to make their lives better or make the project better is absolutely critical, because people can just go off and run off and develop something, and like you said, doesn't get adopted because it's not actually needed.
Yeah, sometimes it's a solution looking for a problem sometimes.
Exactly. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, we're close to the end. I also like to explore with you the future trends for the digital construction industry, and what are the digital trends that you are most excited about right now?
Yeah, look, I mean, I know we've talked about it, and it's not a new trend, but AI it's just moving so quick, and there's constantly new use cases coming out daily. There's never been a technology as fastly adopted as generative AI, and we are really just scratching the surface. I work with Theo in Melbourne, and he is our generative AI leader, and working with him is exciting, because he's got his finger on the pulse with all the AI stuff going out, and so he just feeds all this good stuff to us. And when you speak to him and you speak to other people with him on certain engineering problems, the team won't know what they don't know, but then a few minutes with him and explains how potentially AI can, help this problem, the penny drops, and then they start coming up with all these other ideas. So so I guess, digital trends that I'm most excited about now is definitely AI and just where it's heading and continue to heading. It's going to be such a big part, or just so embedded in the way we do things in the future, where we may not even be talking about it in the next 3 years, because it's like electricity. It's just there.
Yeah, you just have to see how people feel about the outcome that the output of things like ChatGPT. Like, if you try one of the old models, and that's not a long time ago, it already feels like very obsolete. And and like not a long time ago, it was incredible. Everybody was very surprised about it.
Yeah. Well, it's like Meta. They're offering these like $100 million contracts, signing bonuses for their new AI developers from different places to bring in. It's almost like you're seeing, when you see footballers get purchased for, say, Real Madrid or wherever, Manchester United, they're paying that sort of money for these AI whizzes. It's insane.
Yeah, these people can have a real impact. One of the interesting things about the construction industry is that it's been there for a long time. Humans have been building stuff for a while now, and in general, sometimes we feel it's a bit slow in adopting digital solutions. But from your point of view, if you could change one thing about how the industry approaches digital, what would that be?
So I think obviously we're in the digital sort of space. So we're often, when we see problems and challenges, we probably already have that sort of question of like, okay, what can technology or digital do here to enhance that? And I wish everyone, in whatever sort of role they are in this industry, is to really ask, okay, how can we flip it, and how can technology and digital enhance the current task I'm doing? Because I'm Yeah, I'm very biased, but I honestly truly believe that every task that we do can always be improved and can always be enhanced. And I think technology and digital is the key to that enhancement. So basically, people asking the question of every task they do, how can technology and digital help me for this task?
Yeah, that's a very good mindset to have. If you ask yourself, how can I do this digitally? It will always will produce a great certainly an improvement for everybody, because collectively we work together towards the same direction. But thank you very much, Jacob. We are at the end of the episode. Thank you for sharing with us your journey at Aurecon and what you're doing in Asia. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks very much. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jacob Hoare, and it will be Digital Lead Asia.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Have a good day.
Thank you.